Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 30th day of May, 2019. Well, if it's your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. If you're coming back, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. I noticed we have a new subscriber, so thank you so much for that. I saw that. I noticed that last night. I was just slammed yesterday with garden stuff and everything. Oh, there goes a card. And remember this one, the Page of Pentacles. Anytime you drop a card, it could be significant. So remember Page of Pentacles. Anyhow, I noticed that. So welcome to the new subscriber. I love when that happens as we grow our tarot and rune family here together. Well, I've been outside planting things, so I washed my hands, so we'll see just how much dirt's left under my fingernails. So apologies for that. But there's only so much you can do when your hands are in dirt all day long, you know. I grew some lobelia rather than having to buy it, you know. And I like that really dark blue lobelia. And last year, I have one of those clay strawberry towers, and I can never, we're so dry here being on the high desert, I can never keep those things alive in that. So they're in my strawberry beds now and they're doing great. But last year I planted lobelia in it, and it was just gorgeous because the lobelia got really big and it just surrounded, you could hardly even see the pot itself. It was so big. And so I did that again, only this time rather than buying the transplants, I grew them. So we'll see how that goes. But they did really well on the plant, and I was going to take all the dirt out and start all over, you know, but it looks good in there, so I didn't. After a point, you know, if you grow things in pots, you have to dump everything out at some point because the root systems just get to be too much, and there's just not a lot of dirt left in there, really. And I was afraid I was there, you know, this time, but evidently not. So they're in and they're going to grow and they're very cool, and I had some left over, and so I planted them around. And so anyhow, let's get started on this catalytic 3-day. Try to keep our mind, body, spirit in alignment. I'm going to do a post, be a moon post. It's going to move into Taurus tonight, I think 9:43 my time, I think. And so anyway, I'm going to get that done today before it moves. I always try to do it beforehand. Sometimes I don't get to it in time. But anyway, that'll be up on the blog over at imsteppingaside.com. So check that out, and anything else that's on the blog. I'm playing around with the side panel a little bit, and it doesn't look the way I want it to, but I don't think I'm going to change the theme. I've done that several times. I really like this one. It's not, but you know, no theme has everything, so you kind of have to settle. But that's okay. Overall, I like the way it looks, and you know, it is what it is. So let's go ahead and take our first card. And if you're new here, I take the 13th card just for randomness, and because 13 is important to me. I was born on the 13th, and it's everywhere in my life. And you know, I was thinking the other night, last night, I mentioned yesterday that I used to wake up for like at least 5 years. I did this at 3:13 every morning. Well, one thing I talk about here is like, you know, it's like, well, what was that all about, right? I think that it was telling me to stay in balance. Because if you've heard me talk about how I visualize the number 7, how I visualize that manifesting, 7 is like the scales, and so you would have 3 and 3 and 1, 3, 1, 3, 3, 13, balance. Duh. Yeah, I think that's what it was all about. I think at the time that this was happening, I think that my body was getting out of balance and getting toxic. And then eventually, see, I developed rheumatoid arthritis, but not just RA. I developed a severe form of it, evidently. Um, I was severe for 13 years, became a cannabis patient. 2.5 months into my treatment that I devised for myself with some concentrates and not even cannabis oil yet, this thick, sludgy oil stuff, not even that yet, right? Not that first year. That came the second year. But in 2.5 months, I was in clinical remission. Off all the meds. I stayed on Humira until September 13th, I don't know, 2015. Um, and I have not had any prescribed medicines since. That was the only one I stayed on because I was terrified not to, given how sick I was. And then what I did was I became a cannabis patient. I wrote about it in my first book, Confessions of a Back Porch Herbalist. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free to read on that. So if you want to know how I did that, I think even the Kindle version, I only charged like $2.99 for it. I wanted people to understand that you don't have to be chronically ill. I wanted people to understand that you can heal herbally. I also wanted people to understand a little bit more about cannabis and that it's not what we think it is. So consequently, if you want to look at that, go ahead. I really encourage you to do that and then continue to do your research about cannabis, particularly if you live in a legal state where you can start to use this plant to heal your chronic illnesses. We don't have to be ill, folks. We really don't. And so I did that. And 2.5 months into it, see, I'm off everything but the Humira at that point. I was on a ton of stuff. I was so toxic. I mean, I think that I was dying. And basically, they couldn't do anything for me. And so I just decided, well, the heck with all of you. And I became a cannabis patient. And 2.5 months into I decided what I would do and how I would do it. After we grew, I'd made my medicines. I decided what I would do. 2.5 months later, I'm in remission, something those doctors could never do for me. So, balance, 313. It was obvious, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, huh. Anyhow, first card of the day, temperance. Again, balance. The angel's got 1 foot on the land and 1 foot in the water. It's called alchemy in another deck, art in the Thoth deck. We see the water irises there. We see the sun in the distance there. We see a path coming from the mountains there. I don't think it's water, though. It should be blue if it's a creek. I don't think so. I think it's just a path, but it could be. This is about keeping everything in balance, alchemical balance, if you will, in terms of temperance here. But being we're talking about change here, we've got, because we're mixing, one thing with the other here. But it's about adaptation and about cooperation and self-control, about tempering things, not having things to be so fiery, perhaps. Healing, balance, self-restraint, management. I'm looking here, though, and I don't know where my magnifying glass is. My husband makes off with my magnifying glass, and I cannot find it for love nor money. So, did I not turn this one on? Maybe I didn't. Here, let me turn this candle on. That was something a best friend in high school used to always say, that turn on the candles. I'm like, what? It's like, turn on the candles. It's like, no, how about lighting the candles? Blending fire with water, but there was something else here. And I can't read what I wrote. Great way of the something or other. Great way of the something. I can't read what I wrote. Symmetry, harmony, balance, moderation, reconciles fire and water. Hmm. Well, maybe it wasn't on that, but I'm thinking about. So, oh, actually, I have more than one book, so it's probably in the little black book that I have, and I'm not sure where that is. Yeah, it's not right there. So I don't know. I wrote something down about temperance. But it wasn't temperance. It was from another non-traditional deck. It was something like that that I just thought was that's really cool. But anyway, you're looking at the 14th card of the major arcana, so numerologically you're looking at change or a 5. Because in numerology, if you're not aware, what we would do is we would add the 1 to the 4 to equal 5. We want to reduce it down to one digit, basically. And we add together to do that. So that's how we do numerology. And I like to look at that, because 5 is about change, but it's also about fulfillment. So whatever happens after the change as well. So here we're balancing fire with water, so will with emotion. So that's basically what we're starting out with today. And since it's a card from the major arcana, this is a soul archetype card. So, it's higher self tapping us on the shoulder to say, we might want to find a way to sort of tamp things down today. Will with emotion, and especially if you're someone that has a hard time balancing that within, will can, it can accentuate emotion, it can increase emotion. And so basically we just want to tamp things down, tamp down the energy, tamp down the fire, extinguish some of the fire, quench some of the fire. Let's do another card. Another death. Card 13. And in my view, a master witch number. Here we see Death riding on his white horse. Now I'm going to set these cards down so I don't have them all in my hand when I'm trying to show you this. I've shown you guys this before, but right over here, you see the sun is either rising or setting on the scene. Likely setting, but you don't know. But it's rising or setting between two pillars, a common theme. It can be in a doorway. It can be a doorway into new experiences. It can mean a doorway to new perception. It can mean the middle way, the middle path. But here you've got transformation, don't you? True, the king is dead on the ground, and we have, people in all sorts of expressing all sorts of emotions about all of it. You can see the white rose. I love that rose. I'll show you. I'll take just a moment here. I'll just set this here. I'm going to show you this card in the Morgan Greer. See if I can find it very quickly. It's a theme with the rose, though. I just find it beautiful. We think death is a bad thing, but really it's about transition and rebirth. And so when you see the white rose there, that's about purity and rebirth, isn't it? Of course, it's going to be at the tail end, isn't it? Yep. This is the Morgan Greer deck, and then this would be the Rider-Waite. But you can compare the two. Both have this side of the sickle, but you see the white rose. It's an offering, isn't it? Death becomes an offering. You see the river Styx behind him. I may use some Morgan Greer from time to time. I occasionally I do, but I wanted to show you the use of some of this. Now you don't see in this one, I don't think, the idea of the pillars, although it's kind of implied. I mean, you could see it here and here. I mean, it's kind of implied, isn't it? But anyway, so we have transformation in both transition, rebirth, balance with temperance. We have 13, which is about structure. If you do reduce it to 4, you can, you know. It's not considered a master number in numerology, only in my head. So, you know, you don't have to do that. You don't have to leave it alone. But I do. I tend to leave it there. You're also seeing a progression downward from 14 to 13. Which suggests drawing back your energy. Again, that's what temperance is telling us to do, to draw it all back and get it into balance so that emotions are not so much in flux, and so that the will is not, you know, trying to overshadow everything. The two together, you know, and then you throw intellect into it, and then the mouth starts running, and, you know, we all get into trouble when we do that. So let's see if we get another major card, though. That would be interesting. And don't forget the Page of Pentacles. It's a message. So maybe a message having to do with our foundation, you know, our physical presence in the world. Well, we have the King of Wands. I'm going to draw a fourth card. He's looking back at the scene. Basically, you see his little salamander down there. We have a guy in authority, a willful king, if you will. You see his ornate throne behind there. You see you've got some little Ouroboros type looking symbols there. Not the snake so much as the salamander itself reaching around and grabbing its own tail. It is really what this is. But, you know, the salamander, of course, is one of the correspondences, the elemental correspondences of the fire element, basically. Whereas like a sylph would be one for air, gnomes would be for earth. You have salamanders for fire, and wands is reflective of the fire element. So this guy's dynamic. He can be authoritative, being he's the king. He can be out of control. He can be benevolent. He can be intelligent. He can be dynamic. But if the arrogance gets away from him, then that's when he's got problems. He's looking back, though, here. He's looking back at temperance and death, you know, so balance and transformation. So it could be indicative here that if you're somebody in authority, particularly if you're a man in authority, or if you're a woman who maybe has the masculine or projective side of self, maybe is out of balance, to where maybe you're not asserting yourself as much as being aggressive. So that's sort of transitional type of a choice that we make to express ourselves in a way that's out of balance and perhaps threatening to other people. Maybe we don't mean to, we're not really aware of it. Maybe we're just on a roll, you know, and our energy's flowing, and we're not really sure how to keep it managed or keep it balanced. And so temperance is suggesting maybe to this individual that if you're in authority, you know, you might want to keep will and emotions maybe a little more in balance. And then as far as death is concerned, you know, it's clearly a transition for someone that has a hard time doing that. You really do have to make a transformation or a transition into a new state of perception or a new state of awareness. Let's do a fourth card. I'm never comfortable ending with a court card, so I like to have something else just to give a little more information. I'd use the page, but I don't think I will. Well, we have the moon, and I'm glad I didn't. So 3 court cards, folks. 18th card of the major arcana. So we're looking at a 9 energy. 8 and 1 is 9. So 9 energy, and a 9 energy is about completion. And so it's also here, though, again, we're going to look at a similarity here. You see the two pillars? You see the moon shining down there, not real happy with those dogs, dark and light, barking at it. You've got the lobster of transition and rebirth coming up out of the pool. And what do we have over here? Remember that? Same thing, isn't it? Only instead of the moon, it's the sun. So we actually have two cards of transition. We also have illusion and deception with the moon. We have, again, balance. It's also going to reinforce temperance. So what do we have here then? We have 5, 4 is 9. These two result in 9. This is a 9. 9 and 9 is 18, which reduces to 9. Oh, those pesky 3s. So what we have here is we have a 3 energy day. We have an amplification of 9 for that. Higher self is definitely tapping us on the shoulder and is telling us if we're the king in our lives, or whoever the king is in our lives, that there's some deception that with contained within this king. We're going to start this out with the moon, okay? There's some deception surrounding this king. I know the obvious reference, but we did that yesterday, so let's try to stay away from that today. There's some deception surrounding the king, a lack of balance. Temperance comes in because the king cannot balance the shadow self and the spirit side of self. That he cannot find the balance there. There needs to be, the lobster suggesting, some transition, some rebirth, some revelation. Well, we got that, but we talked about that yesterday. We've been getting it, so I don't know why we had to talk about it, but he did, so we did. Anyway, then we move to temperance, where we're going to balance fire with water, or will with emotions. What's lacking, of course, is intellect. What's lacking is a sense of grounding. We don't have any pentacles here. We don't have any air here. But we have fire. We have water. Moon is water. I would say death probably is as well. Also fire. I mean, it's probably all elements in death. But here the king really needs to make a transformation here. So it may be that you are someone in authority, and you're having trouble processing that. Maybe you're having trouble managing how you relate to other people within that, supervisory or authority position that you're in over them. So, but it really suggests that the king needs to look at himself and take a look at, if things aren't working, look here first. If things aren't right, look here first. Don't be so quick to blame other people. He can't look you in the eye. He's looking to the past. So his mind isn't even on the future. It's almost like he's got to watch in case the secrets get out from the moon. Now, it may be impossible for this king to accomplish all of this, over the next, few days. But if you're experiencing this, if you're having trouble expressing authority in your life, if you're somebody who just can't seem to balance will with emotions, the reading's indicating that you really need to try to do that, and that you need to be able to step outside, be willing to step outside your comfort zone in order to explore new ideas and new perceptions. If the past is haunting you, there may be a reason for it. It's almost like, oh, geez, I'm a criminal, but, or I'm a liar, but, none of that should matter. There's the fundamental truth of who we are. And it's all too easy to blame everybody else in the picture, right? For the mistakes that we make or the perceptions that we have that really don't resemble reality. And I really think that that's the focus of this, particularly on this Jupiter day. Jupiter in retrograde, this is inner work. And I think that that's what this is. I think we're looking at potential inner work that needs to get done. I think that maybe we're having trouble balancing, again, will with emotions. And it's time for some transformation. Rune. We're doing pretty well on time. It was that fourth card. See, if I just would have left the, well, of course, I moved things around, didn't I? I couldn't do that. The king wasn't the fourth one. The moon was. Oh, and don't be afraid to move your cards around. If you're exploring tarot, you're learning about tarot, move the cards around. Make them make sense. I mean, in a way, the way I have it here, the king's talking to death. Death is saying, hey, get over yourself. Figure it out. Well, we have I was, the 13th rune of the Elder Futhark. Yeah. The transition that we make when we die, okay? The body dies, the soul goes back and does what it does, right? And eventually, I don't know how quickly this can happen. I know reading the Law of One, that channeled text from a group that claims to be one of the founders of who we are. And they tried to help, lift us up, basically. Anyway, they say that not necessarily, you don't necessarily come right in right away. If you are so damaged when you're here, if you have a very difficult time, if you're a very evil person, if you do bad things, if you are in complete service to self, you might, I mean, they mentioned Hitler had to be taken, the soul had to be put somewhere for healing. So unless you're in that situation, I guess it might take more time before you incarnate somewhere else. On the other hand, the oversoul is massive, and so we're everywhere all at once. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that because you had a difficult time here, in the body here, that you would necessarily have one, somewhere else. It doesn't necessarily mean that your oversoul in its expressions is actually playing out the same type of individual everywhere. Although maybe, I don't know. But at the same time, I think you're going to find something similar in the Seth material as well, where it's not just, okay, you're gone and you're necessarily back, although maybe. So, but when you talk about death, it's a transition, okay? Your soul is abandoning this body, it's laying down this body, and it's going to go and be something else and go infuse into something else. I was describes that process, basically. It describes other processes as well. You see Laguz there, both forward and reverse, so you're allowing the transformation process. This is one of the as above, so below runes in the Elder Futhark. As you can see, Sowillo's one, Issa's one, but I was really it's about spirit infusing form. If we can keep spirit in constant, informing the manifested self, if spirit can stay there and actively present, and we're aware of that, then ego is kept at bay. The personality is kept at bay. It's constantly being informed and directed by spirit. But basically, that's what I is talking about, is that as above, so below energy, and allowing spirit to transform. The king doesn't have to die here, right? That doesn't necessarily mean he has to, kick the bucket in order to make those awarenesses. The idea is to be aware that we are spirit inhabiting a body, and then live that way. Allow spirit to guide the process. Allow spirit to guide the choices that we make. Allow spirit to manifest all that we create, instead of having ego react to everything that's already here. See, we don't think about it that way. Interesting. Cool that it's the 13th rune. Let's do the geomancy rune. Now, if you've not been here before, geomancy is another type of divination tool. It can be, you can use whatever you want to. The idea, if you say you had some peas or some beans, that you get out of your kitchen, right? They're dried, right? Not live ones, but just dried beans or dried peas. You could take a handful, throw them down, count them. If you had an odd number, that will result in a single dot. Okay. If you threw them down and an even number, you counted, there was an even number, then that would be 2 dots. I didn't want to do it that way, but you can. Ultimately, what I did initially was I made the staves, basically. And so what you would do here, you would have 2 dots on one side and 1 on the other. And then these go in a pattern of fire, air, water, and earth. Okay, and they're going to look ultimately like this. Let's see, this one is pur, means boy. So you can see there's 4 levels there. Ultimately, I ended up just doing them as runes, but I could just simply reach in and grab one, but I don't want to do that because that's not how it's done. I do this once a month. I just do a monthly tarot reading. I do a monthly geomancy reading on the blog, so look for that here coming up because June 1st is coming. Today's the 30th, so one more day. So I'll be doing that here this weekend, getting those ready to go up on the blog. But basically what I do is I just sort of mix them up and then I put them down. And then, where is my pen? There it is. All right. I'll just leave Kata here just in case. So we're going to do, let's see, fire is going to be a single dot. And, oh, well, it's all going to be single dots, so we know. All right, so Vaya is the geomancy rune, and it looks like this. I will draw it. Ultimately, when I do the geomancy reading, I'm going to create something like this. So you can see them all there. In fact, Vaya's right here. You can see all the astrological information there, and you can see down here in the bottom, you can see in the circle, there's the intelligence governing this reading. It governs Albus, basically. But anyway, that's what you'll see when you get there. But this is Vaya, or way. So it's a very active principle. If it's a dual dot, if it's 2 dots, that's a passive principle. A single dot would be an active principle. And so this is about the direction and journey that we're taking, Vaya. So I think that basically, rather than that being, that could be the overall question, I think, of the reading, is what direction are we going in? You know, are we going to go in one that's out of balance all the time where, you know, we really don't want to be responsible for the things that we've done or the things that we do, that we want to blame everybody else, that we want to cause deception, or do we want to come back into balance and try to keep those things in a way that instead of being so willful and so out of whack emotionally, I mean, it makes somebody into a complete basket case. You know, if it's a male energy like this, it could be someone in authority who's just completely out of control, um, can't tell the truth to save his soul, relies on deception because his behavior is so, you know, criminal that there's just no. I mean, I suppose if you live that life, I guess you would do that, though, wouldn't you? So on the one hand, if that's what's really going on with this king, then we really shouldn't be surprised, right? That in a way, his behavior should be predictable. You know, the deception, the will out of balance with emotions. So one minute he's raging, and the next minute he's, you know, freaking out or whatever. It's basically saying we need a transition, and death comes along and gives us that. Is saying, look, you know, you don't have to die to transform. You can transform yourself. You know, we are spirit. We are the creator, focused into form for a time, right? To learn things, to experience life in tangible form. If we're not manifesting like we should be, then life just takes us, doesn't it? Wherever it wants us to go. And then you have no control over anything. And the way you maintain control is by having will and emotions out of kilter. And you think about that. You think about people you may know that are like that. Well, that's interesting. Something to think about over the weekend. Well, we began Tuesday with balanced polarity, emphasizing fellowship and unity. And then the next day, change in awareness and perception. And again, we continued it on today, focusing on someone who's a, you know, person in authority who maybe isn't managing it very well, or shouldn't be there, maybe shouldn't be in authority, maybe just it isn't possible for them if they can't transform into something more appropriate. And I suppose if you're somebody who lives in deception all of the time, that's likely not to happen. There's too many skeletons in the closet or riding a white horse. So I don't know. Well, groovy folks, listen, thank you so much for coming by. And again, click subscribe. I'd love you to do that and come back. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I do look at them. You know, I get there eventually. I'm trying to be more responsible that way. Um, as the garden gets more, you know, ready to be on its own, then you know, I'm sure that I'll be a little more attentive. But right now it's like, oh God, did I remember to plant that? Did I water it? Oh no. So, anyhow, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Be good to yourself. Be good to one another. And blessed be.